Gurudev ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the final verse that is the verse number 7 of the Gita Mahatmya we can chant today. This is from the Padma Purana. Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam Eko Deva Devaki Putra Eva Eko Mantrastasya Namami Yami Karmapni Sankam Tasya Devasya Seva.
Let there be one scripture only, one common scripture for the whole world, Bhagavad Gita. Let there be one God for the whole world, Sri Krishna. Let there be only one hymn, one mantra, one prayer, the chanting of his name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let there be one work only, the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
So this completes the glorification of Gita, Bhagavad Gita from the Gita Mahatmya, which originally was sung by Lord Shiva and put by Lord Vyasadev into the Padma Purana. Very nice set of glorification of Gita. So before we move on to chapter 5, which is Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness, a couple of devotees had questions, and I thought it'd be best if they're raised in front of everybody from yesterday. So, Naniben, you had a question?
Yes. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes. My question was how to maximize your time, I mean, in social activities that we are doing at home, in Krishna consciousness. I know we have to chant, we have to remember the devotional bhakti, the 9 forms, but how to maximize when, as for example, when we're just walking, I know remembering Krishna is one thing, but to maximize it so that our activities get sanctified.
Yes, very nice question. How do we make sure whatever we do, we try to do it in Krishna consciousness? When we're meeting friends, of course, nowadays that's not so much, but maybe on the phone or walking or cooking, isn't it? Even cooking?
Yes, walking, cooking, yes. And as you say, as a being professional, we have to meet with other people, and then our time goes there, and we chant and we be happy. But it's not possible to chant all the time because these friends are not Indians, rather. So I know we have to remember him all the time, but at times it's not possible at all.
Yeah, may not be. I mean, the easy ones, cooking, for example, we usually have bhajans playing in the background.
Yes.
So, or we listen to lectures at that same time. Jayanti always listens to lectures, mainly because she's trying to avoid hearing me.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not in the kitchen nowadays anyway. That's one thing. When you're walking, of course, you can chant and walk at the same time. When you're socializing with...
That will not be an aparad, isn't it? We're chanting or doing our jap when we are walking outdoors. Would that be?
No, it's okay. As long as we're not sightseeing. Sometimes
go
on japa walks and actually they're checking it out. Oh, that's a nice car. Oh, that's a nice, beautiful woman there. Like that. It's best, when we're chanting, it's best to sit and chant, ideally in front of the deities, or at least, focused. But if you want to go for a japa walk, that's absolutely fine. Just we don't want to make it into a sightseeing walk.
No, these days, because we have to be trying to, walking is a part of the health exercise type of a thing.
Good. That's absolutely fine. Now, when you're talking with friends, yes, especially if they have nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, you do want to, of course, we're still living in this world. We do have to interact with those who may not be so interested in God consciousness as we are. So how do we do that and still engage in Krishna consciousness? That can be a little bit challenging. However, it just depends. Sometimes it's like Karuna Bandar is on this call. She was saying one of her teachers wants to join this class, for example. So sometimes we can bring in God-related, Krishna-related items into the conversation. Often, I mean, when I used to go to work, there were especially a couple of young chaps, Tom and Henry. I still remember them very much. We always talked about Krishna eventually. It just took a little time, but then they got interested and they started reading Bhagavad Gita. And in fact, they came to the temple. They came to some of our bigger satsangs. It is possible to introduce Krishna consciousness. It just can be how we do it. We just need to be a little bit mindful. Otherwise, we might just put people off completely. Mm-hmm. But, you know, at the end of the day, we do have to live in this world, communicate in this world. And it's not always possible to talk about Krishna all the time. At least not for us who are not sannyasis or gurus. You know, they have this ability that they can constantly just talk about Krishna to whoever they meet. Like Prabhupada would talk about Krishna to everybody and anybody. So we just have to be mindful. If we can do it, let's do it. If we can't, we don't associate too closely with those who are not Krishna conscious. Ideally, we want to give our association rather than take their association, because their worldly view is a little different from our worldly view, and we don't necessarily align with their worldly view, and we don't want to take on perhaps their habits. So, but we want to try to encourage our habits, like no meat eating, fish, eggs, no intoxicating.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, some of the lectures I listen to, they mention that, like, is also like when you're working, what you can do is, okay, you know, you're working on the computer, every 15 minutes, you know, have a little alert, and then at that junction, just chant Hare Krishna. So you're doing that, you know, every 15 minutes, and then you increase that. It's in your mind only. Also, so you can use that example when you're talking to people. Okay, you're having a conversation, but maybe, you know, once in a while, just think of Krishna, you know, just chant Krishna in your mind.
Yes. Very good point. Yeah, when we see the people, when we see my friends, especially colleagues, doctor colleagues, they are interested. They are interested in the chats, and so we do talk about it. Yeah. But I hope that is not counted as talking to somebody who has got no interest or not faith in our religion.
No, that's okay.
No. Okay.
At the end of the day, we have to interact with those who may not be Krishna conscious, because we are living in this material world. So it's not that we're going to be talking with Krishna conscious people all the time.
Yeah.
Ideally, we do want to be in that situation, but it's not, unless we're living in the temple, it's not always possible.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. That's fine. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes.
Thank you. And
good points. Good points.
Thank you very much. And Sanjana, would you like to repeat your question to me?
Hi, Hare Krishna. Yes, I'll try and repeat it to the best of my ability. I know I sent quite a long message last night. So I'd been reading, well, I found this book actually at my grandma's house, which I think was The Perfection of Yoga. I think it's one of the books from so, and a few other books that my mom has, which it's been mentioning one of the reasons why we know that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead is these 6 opulences. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I know that wealth was one of them. And then I think the example was that in this society, we can see a lot of people who are wealthy, they are attractive to us, and Krishna has all of these opulences, that's why he's all attractive. So I just wanted to know, is there like a distinction between Krishna's spiritual wealth and the material wealth that we see here? Because obviously the material wealth perpetrates Maya, whereas obviously Krishna would not be perpetrating such things. And sometimes people with material wealth here would act in ways that are inappropriate, whereas again, obviously Krishna would not be acting in such ways.
Excellent question, Sanjana. In essence, what you are saying is, if we have material wealth, is that a sign that one is favored by the Lord, perhaps, or attracted to the Lord, or gets attracted to the Lord? No, actually, wealth can be a great distraction. And as you rightly said, in this material world, wealth can be actually misused, and people who are wealthy can, engage in all sorts of things which are not anything to do with Krishna consciousness. So wealth in itself is not bad, not wrong. But what wealth normally does, if a person becomes wealthy or has wealth, there's a little pride, become very proud that, hey, I'm rich, I'm a self-made man, I'm very intelligent and I'm very talented in attracting money, and look at all these poor people around me. That pride sets in, and even if one is God conscious, unfortunately this pride can be there even one who's wealthy, and it's actually a distraction, and it's a hurdle in God consciousness. If one is not wealthy, there is no obstacle in them becoming Krishna conscious. If one is wealthy, again, there is no obstacle in becoming God consciousness. It's available to everybody. But generally, when one is wealthy, you develop a certain amount of arrogance and pride, and it can become an obstacle. It can become distraction. There are a couple of examples. Sudama, he was a very poor Brahmin friend of Krishna. And he was so poor, they had nothing to eat. His wife would tell him, go and meet Krishna. He lives in Dwarka. You know that. He's a king. Ask him for some money. How can we live like this? So he was persuaded to go to see Krishna by his wife. And he wanted to see Krishna because he loved Krishna. He hadn't seen him for many years. But he had no possessions. He took a little bit of rice with him just as a present. And eventually he got to Dwarka, and they wouldn't let him in because he looked so rough and ready. But when Krishna heard Sudama, his friend, has come, Krishna ran to the gates of the palace and greeted him and sat him on his bed and did aarti to him, fed him. They had such love between each other. And the people in Dwarka were very well dressed and very opulent and rich. They were wondering, who's Krishna doing aarti to? He's such a poor beggar. But actually, he was Krishna's dear friend. So just having wealth is not a qualification of becoming God conscious. In fact, it can be a disqualification. There's another devotee called Pundarik Vidya Nidhi. He was in the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was very wealthy. And he used to wear amazing clothes. And it appeared he was a very worldly man. So one time Gadadhar Pandit was introduced to him by Mukunda Dutt. And Gadadhar Pandit was thinking, crikey, is this person a devotee? He's so wealthy and he looks so worldly minded. So he was a little bit offensive in his mind. And Mukunda Dutt understood that. So Mukunda Dutt spoke a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Vidyanidhi, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, when he heard that verse, he went into ecstasy of love of Krishna. And then Gadadhar Pandit understood that he was looking at the outer, the clothing and the jewelry that Pundarik Vidyanidhi was wearing. But actually, inside, this is a pure devotee of the Lord. So wealth doesn't have to be a barrier, but it can be a barrier. Does that make sense, Sanjana?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Also, another thing is, Krishna has his 6 opulences. If you notice, Krishna's devotees are always poor, whereas
not always.
Well, generally poor, because Krishna takes that away from us to get us closer to him. If he thinks that's what is needed, whereas if you look at Shiva's devotees, Shiva is looks like a poor beggar, but most of his devotees have a lot of wealth. So it does not resonate that you need wealth to be Krishna conscious. So.
And Shiva, of course, is a great devotee of the Lord. He wears simple clothes. He's usually covered in ashes. He lives in the cemetery. but his devotees tend to be rich because Shiva is very kind, and he doesn't see whether this wealth will help the devotee or not. Whereas the Lord Krishna, he will judge, okay, this devotee wants wealth, but will it help him become closer to me? And if it doesn't, then he will give, but in a different way. He'll give a different type of wealth.
Example is Prabhupada, because Krishna took everything away from Prabhupada so that Prabhupada could start this mission. And then Prabhupada had everything in the world at his feet after that.
Yes. Anyway, we'll start on chapter 5, if that's okay, unless there's any other questions or comments. Okay, so very, very quick summary. Krishna's main man, Arjun, didn't want to fight. He had weakness of heart. Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Arjun asked for help from Krishna, and Krishna immediately guided him that what his real identity is, what his duty is as a spirit soul, and the nature of the persons who follow their duties, what they like. And in chapter 3, Krishna explains about karma yoga, how to do one's duty without attachment to the fruits, and that person can set an example to the world and avoid sinful activities. And chapter 4, which we finished yesterday, Krishna explains how transcendental knowledge is passed down and his mission on earth. And which is, of course, to recover, to reclaim us, let us remember him again. And the different types of actions and the importance of acquiring knowledge, especially through the spiritual master. Today, we're going to talk about karma yoga. And, okay. So karma yoga is all about, again, Arjun wanted more clarification from Krishna. So he asks him, he asks him, what is better? Please tell me clearly whether it's to renounce, because Krishna talks about renunciation in chapter 4, or to work. And then Krishna explains how to turn his work into worship, how to perform work, but outside working, but inside you renounce the fruits of your action, and how that person can attain peace, detachment, etc., spiritual vision. So now this chapter, there's 4 themes. There's one, we discussed a little bit yesterday, Nishkam Karma Yoga is described, where the results are surrendered to the Lord. Second is the results of such action, what the soul will realize that actually we are not the doer. And this is a really challenging concept for us to accept, but we shall try to understand how we are never the doers, the soul anyway. And it also talks about how the soul can have equal vision when we take shelter of the Lord. So we see everybody as spirit soul as opposed to distinguishing between individuals. And also the Lord will take us through the peace formula in this chapter. So it's a very, very important chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So maybe Sanjana, you could read today.
Yeah, okay. Text 1. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" Text 2. The personality of Godhead replied, "The renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than the renunciation of work." Text 3. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to always be renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Text 4. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. Text 5. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. Text 6. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. Text 7. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Text 8 to 9. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, perceiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects, and that he is aloof from them.
So very quickly, this is quite an interesting two texts here, how the spirit soul itself is not engaging in all these different things, but actually the material senses are. So it's a very interesting one. So please bear this one in mind. We'll talk about this later. Sorry, carry on.
Yep. Text 10. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Text 11. The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. Text 12. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace, because he offers the result of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled.
Okay, so text 10, that's one theme. Thank you very much. That's first theme finished. So one who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results of the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful actions, as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. Key verse in this particular section. So we do a quick summary. In the fourth chapter, despite Krishna's explanations, in the third chapter, Krishna explains karma yoga. But Arjuna is still not satisfied. So again, he brings Krishna to talk about karma yoga. But this karma yoga he's talking about now is at a higher level. It's nishkam karma yoga. The previous one was sakam karma yoga, where you do your work, but you're just unattached to the result. But as yet, you have not brought the Lord within that cycle. In this situation, karma yoga action in Krishna consciousness, the Lord comes into the picture. So you're working, but you're not attached to the results, but also you're surrendering the result to the Lord. So that's this is a step up from chapter number 3. So chapter 5 is karma yoga action in Krishna consciousness. An individual who works in spiritual consciousness is automatically elevated to the platform of renunciation, in the sense that he's doing akarma, not karma, but akarma. Akarma means any action that has no reaction. If one engages in righteous activities, offering the fruits, the results to God, and all the while keeping alert to the ultimate goal, then such work becomes worship. Sometimes people say to us that, oh, Bhagavad Gita means you work. My work is my worship. I go to work from 6 in the morning till 8 at night, and that is my worship. Well, no, that's not what Krishna is advising Arjuna. Krishna is advising Arjuna, do your work, but do it in a spirit of renunciation of the fruit and offering that fruit to the Supreme Lord. That work becomes worship. For most people, it would be premature and detrimental to sever themselves from worldly relationships and duties in pursuance of spiritual perfection, because it's not the right time for them. They're not ready to sever themselves from worldly relationships. It'll be artificially imposition. So the path of karma yoga offers this progressive means of becoming spiritual whilst at the same time living in this world, working, interacting with others. So you're not separating yourselves from society, but you're working within society, but at the same time you are detached and you've got a strong connection with the Supreme Lord. Just like the lotus leaf is surrounded by water, but it's completely dry. It stays in this world it remains aloof from the water. So similarly, we can stay in this world and remain aloof from all its happenings of the world. Now, the lesson is it's a challenging one. How can we purify our work obligations? But it's an interesting one that we can think about. A portion of our results that we are gaining, or the salary we earn, or the income we receive, we can use that in the service of the Lord. Now, the Lord doesn't need anything, as Sanjana was saying. You know, he's got one of those 6 opulences. It's his great wealth. But we need to purify our existence. So the standard actually was set by Rupa Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whereby he would give 50% of his wealth to the Lord, 25% he would give to the family, and 25% he would keep in reserve. Now, of course, this is perhaps very challenging for most people to be, because we've always been in a situation where we've always taken, and we don't have this inclination to perform charitable works. So it's good to start somewhere, wherever one is comfortable. It shouldn't be that, oh, I have to give so much to the Lord, and we give it in a grudging mood. No, no, no. If we want to give it to the Lord, we give in a nice, positive mood, and something that we ourselves are comfortable with. And then slowly, slowly, we will see the transformation in our consciousness. And in that way, we will be able to offer more and more to the Lord, not just what we earn, but our very self, our very thoughts, our very actions to the Lord. So the idea is not that the Lord needs the money, nor the devotees, because the devotees will always be provided by the Lord. But we need to be coming to a consciousness of giving in a very nice, positive way. So this is
Prabhuji?
Yes.
Sorry, basic question. What is this 50%, or what is this percentage figures that he was giving to the 50% to the Lord? What is his time, or
No, his wealth? His
wealth?
His time and was 100%. But when he was a minister, Rupa Goswami was a minister in the kingdom, and he decided to join Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and basically become full-time in Krishna consciousness. Of course, he's one of the eternal associates of the Lord. So this is a Leela. So when he left, he had substantial amount of wealth because he was a minister. So what he did was he split that wealth into 4 parts. 2 parts he gave to the Lord, 1 part he gave to the family, and 1 part he kept. But actually, throughout his life, he only, after that, we became a devotee, he only was wearing a very simple loincloth, and he'd have a little bead bag, and he would beg for his food. So even that 25% he gave away. But this was an indication of how we can live in this world by and purify our wealth. Of course, we have mortgages in this world. We have so many other commitments. So this 50% is not a complete requirement. It is just an example. Whatever we're comfortable with, it may be 1%, it may be 100%. Whatever one is comfortable with, one should renounce that wealth in the favor of the Lord. That's the whole point. Does that make sense, anybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just another point as well. If you look at the 4 ashrams, you have brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprast, and sannyas. So the brahmacharis, vanaprast, and sannyasis, they don't really go out and earn. So actually, society is maintained by the grihasthas. So all the temples, all the sannyasis, all the brahmacharis are really maintained by the income from the grihasthas.
Whose works outside.
Who work and live outside the temple. So that's another way of looking at this as well.
Yeah.
Madhusudan Prabhu, you'd like to share anything?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
quite interesting and some good questions as well in the beginning, and they were inquiring. But these verses in chapter 5 also highlights, the actions that further, Arjuna is inquiring, what is work in renunciation? And so there are people who think, okay, inaction, or rather not doing anything, renounce all my work is better. But that's not really, I mean, there are people who will do it, who will just don't want to do any action, go up in the mountains, in the cave. And then there are some philosophies which are impersonalist and voidism is another aspect, where people desire just to nullify and don't want to do any action because they think I'm going to get reactions to it. Might as well just be void, And if you do desire void, you do get it actually, because Buddhists, they end up in a very void kind of nothingness. And the souls and the yogis can stay in that transient kind of void, is in a void for a very long time, and then they suddenly realize, I've had enough of this void, there's nothing to do here, and that's why Krishna, in bhakti, you're actually acting, you're doing actions, because in the spiritual world, there is spiritual activities going on. Whereas in the material world, there are material activities going on. But the material activities are futile and there's zero result. But spiritual activity is different, actually. And even if you do 1% in this life, some spiritual activity, that's like a bank balance. It just gets deposited. And then you carry on with 2% some other time or whatever. But it's never gone. It's eternally there, And whereas material activities, you just goes into nothingness, when you may collect, wealth, can be a millionaire, billionaire, trillion, whatever you want to be. Still, you just leave everything behind. We know that nobody takes anything with them, So in that way, we act in our life in such a way that we do all our actions. All activities are to be done. Whatever you do, we have to eat, we eat. We have to sleep, we sleep. But while we're doing all that, we are doing with the consciousness of knowing that, it's the soul doesn't really need to be doing all these things. Actually, it's a spiritual part and parcel of Krishna. And is thinking of Krishna all the time, being conscious of him. In our life, that's an added dimension, actually. This is what I like, the Prabhupada also said, just add Krishna in your life. You don't have to give up anything. And about this, Rupa Goswami also set an example, but he did that when he was actually taking on a higher mission to go to Vrindavan, and under the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and do Krishna conscious activities, which he was instructed to do in Vrindavan. He was one of the Goswamis, who searched out all the different pastimes in Vrindavan and all the sites which were important. So Vrindavan was covered up at that time. So 500 years ago, Rupa Goswami, joined Lord Chaitanya's mission like that. So he gave up. When he did give up, he was a very wealthy person, he was working as a minister in the Muslim empire that was at that time in India. He was one of the ministers. But like you said, he left, some money for the family and reserve. And even that reserve, he left it for his brother later on, to use it, for the purpose. So yeah, we have to act accordingly in our life. And again, somebody asked a question earlier on that in our activities, everyday life, we do have to interact with society. We don't want to be in a position where we isolate ourselves, you know. Not a question of, you know, we don't want to, you know, although they're materialistic, or they're, you know, I go to work, or I've worked with so many different types of people. I've had to interact with them, you know, they would be eating me, they would be whatever, you know, at lunchtime. But you learn to insulate yourself, and you think of Krishna in your own, hey, like we have to live in a bubble nowadays.
That's right.
So create our own bubble with Krishna consciousness, you know, a nice little comfortable bubble with Krishna in your consciousness, in your mind, in your activities, and chant and eat prasad and interact like that. But you do have to insulate yourself, not isolate yourself. And then with other people, you do have to relate with them. You don't want to, you know, you want to attract them to Krishna as well. But by your actions, they think, oh, you know, this person is so, you know, I don't want to be like him. He never even socializes with anyone. So we don't want to deter people. We want to attract people to Krishna consciousness. Our way of life should be in such a way, and our behavior is such a way that people get attracted to Krishna and our way of life, rather than repelling them. We don't want to repel people, do we?
Good point.
Okay, I hope that helps.
Nice, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Especially your point about whatever we give, whatever we do, you will never lose it, and it'll just you just build on that in your next life. Yeah, spiritual background. Any questions on this point? It's quite a challenging point.
Hi, Hare Krishna.
Yes,
I just wanted to ask about, so setting aside a portion of the results for the Lord, what form would that take? So is that directly donating to a temple? For example, you know, when you act in a karma, when you're like, okay, I have this fruit, I want to give it to someone who's homeless, for example, but first I'll offer it to the Lord. Would that be part of offering your fruits in service of the Lord?
It could be. I mean, temple is one direction. There's many different causes that one can seek out. There's the Food for Life, which is like that homeless business. It's best not to give straight to a homeless person, because especially if, you know, they're addicted to alcohol, because they probably will use that money to buy more alcohol. And we'll see in the 18th chapter how that really is charity in the mode of ignorance. That's not a good thing to do. But giving for Food for Life, so that ISKCON runs a Food for Life where they cook and then they give to people who are in need. Or Goshalas, looking after Krishna's cows. So many different things that you can do. But
what about education, Prabhuji?
Education,
Giving for
very,
schools?
very important, especially spiritual education. In this world, there is no schools which teach us about the soul. That's what Krishna is teaching. So you're absolutely spot on. And you often give to the Vrindavan, Sandipani school. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So very, very, very important, because you're educating people, and education is very much needed in this world. Thank you.
Temple constructions, Prabhu.
School construction, temple construction. Yep. Yeah. Who's that? Maitreya, yes. Very good, Maitreya. Thank you very much.
There is a temple in Mauritius, new temple.
Which needs to be
we need your donation. Guys.
That was a quick plug for the Mauritian Yatra. Thank you for that question, Sanjana. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
that does.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Quick question from me. Hari Bol. What I was wondering was, you know, like karma is basically work, you know, based around work that we do here while we're alive. Say that somebody passes away, but in his will he wrote, give this portion of money to, you know, a temple, you know, or something. That's question number one. And then the question number two, I was talking to a Christian priest a little while back, and he was telling me that the Roman Catholic Church had basically said something on the lines a couple of centuries ago that, oh, if you give money to the temple or to the church, you can absolve your ancestors from hell so they can get out of hell.
Yeah.
Is this true, both these points? Hare Krishna.
So first point is, yes, you know, whatever you donate, even after you've left, if it goes in the purpose of serving the Lord, that will definitely, that benefit will definitely accrue to that person who's giving it. Most definitely. So that's the answer to the first question. The second question is, we have a little bit different way of thinking here from the Vedic point of view. When somebody passes away, their children will do Pind ceremonies. So they will go to Haridwar or Rishikesh or do Shraddh. So that Shraddh ceremony goes to the benefit of the ancestors. But not just that. When Prahlad Maharaj's father, Hiranyakashipu, was killed by the Lord, Prahlad Maharaj asked Nrsingadev, or Nrsingadev asked Prahlad Maharaj, I've killed your father, I've protected you, and you've been such a wonderful devotee, I want to give you something. Prahlad Maharaj said, no, I don't want anything from you, my Lord. Just to see you has been amazing. But eventually Prahlad Maharaj, because the Lord kept asking, Prahlad Maharaj eventually said, yes, okay, if you want to give me something, please protect my father. So the answer of Lord Nrsingadev was very interesting. He said, because you're a devotee, because you're my devotee, how many generations were there? 20, 25 generations of your family are already protected by me. So he ran it both directions, going past and going future. And your father is already with me in the spiritual world. So you don't have to worry about him. So once one becomes a devotee, then automatically the ancestors are actually liberated. So it's a very powerful thing to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. Does that make sense, Pitambar?
You know, that is really, really, really brilliant, actually. You know, thank you, because I do, like, for example, you know, if someone was living on their own, a devotee, and he passed away or whatever, you know, and he did leave it, I always wondered that. So that's a real good. And the second point is really cool as well. Thank you.
We'll see later on in this chapter, or maybe the next, I think it's this chapter, how the devotee doesn't actually, he's got nothing to worry about at all. It's later on in the Gita, actually. Because Krishna talks about if a yogi passes away the dark part of the year, he comes back. If he passes away in the light part of the year, he goes to the spiritual world. A devotee doesn't mind, doesn't care. He's always protected. Whenever he passes away, Krishna's with him.
So basically, anyone who starts chanting Hare Krishna and starts adopting the Vaishnav qualities into his life and principles, he's already started affecting the ancestors.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Oh, thanks, Hare Krishna.
Well done. Thank you for that question. So I was thinking we'll try to get in one more theme before we finish today, if that's okay with the devotees, unless somebody's got a question. Partha, are you with us? Would you like to read?
Sure.
Okay. Text
13.
Yeah.
When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. Text 14. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Text 15. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Text 16. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed. Then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime.
Okay, that's it. So this verse here is critical, text 14, that the soul does not create activities, nor does it induce people to act, nor does it create the fruits of action, i.e., when we go to this work and we're getting a salary, that's not the spirit soul who's actually creating this. So this is all done by material mode of nature, or modes of material nature. And this is something that's quite difficult for us to understand. Now, because whilst we're living in this world, we can assume that we are the director, the controller, the breadwinner. But in reality, there are three doers, Krishna explains. The individual soul desires, we desire. What to speak of controlling the results of our activities. We are barely in control of even a physical and mental tools with which we perform these activities. So the soul, its function is simply having the desire, the thought. The super soul sanctions that desire. God sanctions that desire. And he lives within our heart. So he allows that desire to be fulfilled. And who fulfills that desire is the third doer, material nature. The material nature, the devatas, the demigods, they make all the necessary arrangements. So this is quite a tough one to understand. But here's a little diagram just to explain it a little better. The soul desires. The Lord does not interfere with our desire. Right? So when we desire, the Lord as super soul sanctions the desire that the souls deserve. Right? The Lord is the director of the choreography of who causes the activities to be done through material nature. So he sanctions it. Modes of material nature get involved, and they fulfill the desires of the soul. Who is actually responsible? Well, it's not the super soul, because the super soul was not responsible for the action in the first place. He just sanctions it. He allows it to take place. But it's a living entity who's responsible for our own desires, which result in action. So the benefit of understanding the position of the Lord is it can lead us to the state of perfect knowledge. So we may desire, and this is where we need to control our activities. So what is the lesson? A practical one. When we desire something, we want to buy something which is non-essential, don't really need it, but we're thinking we need it. So we have a desire. Think once, do we really need this? Think twice, do I really need this? Think thrice, do I really, really need this item? I think by the time we come to the third, do I really, really, really need this item? We can probably decide that we don't need this item at all. So this will demonstrate that the soul, we, can only desire. And it can also demonstrate we can control our desires. This is quite important, to be able to control our desires. One of the qualities, if you recall, in the second chapter of a self-controlled person was desires will come, just like rivers flow into the ocean. But the self-controlled person, he's not affected by the desires that come into his mind. He's not going to act upon them. He's not going to want those desires fulfilled. So this is a interesting way by which we can try to control our thoughts, our desires, because the Lord will fulfill our desires. But we want to control the desires that we have so that they are purely Krishna conscious desires. We want to serve the Lord more, we want to chant more, we want to read more. Those are the sort of desires. We don't want the desires that I want this material object, if I can get this one phone, then I'll be so happy I won't need anything else. No, it's not going to happen, because that phone is a material item. It will never fulfill our spiritual needs. And as soon as we get this phone or whatever gadget it is, it will not give us satisfaction. We'll feel frustrated, and unfortunately, we will have other desires that we want to be fulfilled. Material desires. So we try to reduce our material desires, increase our spiritual desires. Understanding that we are not the doers. So we may go out to work, we may earn the money, but ultimately we need to understand that this is all being done through material nature. I'm lifting my hands now. But actually the soul is not lifting. The soul is simply having the desire to lift the hands. There's a demigod meeting that takes place very fast, quick. They meet, they decide this fellow has a desire to move his hands. The Lord sanctions it, and I'm moving my hands. And that's done by the demigods through material nature. But we are thinking, I am doing that. But all we've done is had a desire to do it. Madhusudan Prabhu?
Haribol, yeah. Yeah, now you covered that very well, so it's just having the right kind of desires. And that's where we need some sort of guidance. And even just taking the guidance of Bhagavad Gita, we start to realize, what is action, what are the right kind of desires to have, and control them. It's hard to control sometimes, even like our thinking, we just can't control it. But dovetailing is very important. Whatever we think, can I use this? I mean, like, we have gadgets, we're in the world of gadgets, cars, this, that, whatever. But as long as if you can think like in line with, how can I use this in Krishna's service? We may be using this laptop, we're Zooming. This Zoom can use it for so many different other purposes, but we're using it to understand Krishna and learn more about Krishna. And then, so we're using it in that purpose. So as long as we're using it, then our desires are in line with spiritual desires, so that will be more satisfying and more rewarding as well. So it's just having that so nothing wrong with having even a Rolls Royce, but if you can use it in Krishna's service, that will be even much, much better, So whatever we desire, just have that in mind,
Very good point. Very good point. Dovetail the desire into Krishna's
that's what Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, I'm using whatever I can, like the printing press or print my books. And whatever wealth he got, he built temples, he printed books, and he gave the knowledge to all the devotees, the rest of the world. And here we are, we're discussing the same philosophy because he acted on that platform.
Nice. Thank you. Very good. Very nice to share that. Any questions, please? Any comments?
Yes, this is very confusing.
Yes. Yes. This is deep philosophy.
Yes, it is deep philosophy, because we thought that desires are made by our mind, controlled by our intelligence, and then we act on it. But this is completely different concept that we have to think from now.
Yeah, you're correct. The mind has a role in this as well. The mind will convince us that this is completely what you need. But the soul is higher than the mind. I mean, the intelligence is higher than the mind, and the soul is higher than the intelligence. So the soul can, by the intelligence, control the mind and say, no, mind, you don't need that. Or, as Madhusudan said, yes, you can use it, but in the service of Krishna. So the soul is in charge, but only it can desire. It is in charge of the intelligence which can control the mind. But this concept, this is quite a, even devotees who have been devotees for many, many years, believe me, Naniben, somebody who's been devotee for about 30 years, I explained this to them about a year ago, and they said to me, is that possible? I said, yes, here it is in the Bhagavad Gita. They couldn't believe that it's been always in the Bhagavad Gita, but not understood, not accepted. But this is a very nice point. If we can understand this early on in our spiritual life, that we are, the soul simply desires, and it can have good desires and not so good desires, then we can distinguish early on in our spiritual career how to act, how to behave.
So soul does think. So does have this only action of the soul is desire. Is it nothing?
Yes.
Okay.
All we can do is desire.
Because we means a human being, like we means Nani or
the soul.
We means the soul. Yes. That's what we have to think, isn't it?
Yes.
When he hears we do things, we do this, you do that.
Yes.
They're not talking to this material body. They're talking about the soul.
Correct.
But that is the beginning of our material existence, isn't it? Because we start from the point of desiring to have independence from Krishna. We're all in the spiritual world. We are in the spiritual world in one sense. We are connected with Krishna, but we are in full knowledge there. We already know what our position is, who Krishna is. But as soon as we desire, I would like to enjoy what Krishna enjoys. I would like to be independent and exercise my free will and desire to be independent. Then Krishna says, well, you can be independent, but then I'll have to make arrangements for you. So he engages so many demigods and even Lord Brahma to create the material universes so that the souls can go there and be independent and try and fulfill their desires. Just like, because slight bit of envious of Krishna, we can become like that, And suddenly we are in the material world trying to enjoy and trying to think, this is mine, I'm enjoying here, my own free will, my desires are being fulfilled. But it's the demigods who have to make all the arrangements, So it's not just our own, but you can see how many souls there are. How many souls are desiring so many different things. Some are desiring nice food, some, a soul is desiring, he wants to eat animals, he gets a lion's body, And all these arrangements are made by the demigods and the material nature. So it gets fulfilled. Desires do get fulfilled, but Krishna allows that freedom to fulfill your desires. But then they're so tangling. They're tangled up. We get so tangled up in this material. So we go through birth, death, all the diseases, and then become suffering and all that. Some desires get so perverted in nature that, you think, can you imagine some people just desire to just go and cut somebody's throat?
Yeah.
Some desire just to go and blow up some people.
Yes.
Well, how does Krishna fulfill those desires? All the demigods have to make arrangements, So it becomes such an intricate kind of complicated, like, it's like, how does the internet work? So many thousands of people connected in this way and that way, all talking independently, and how the mobile phones working independently. So it's so intricate, it becomes complicated for us to understand. But yet Krishna controls and fulfills everyone's desire, and he is in everyone's heart as a super soul. But it's only when we start to choose the right kind of desires and under the guidance of a proper spiritual master who is fully Krishna conscious, who understands what Krishna likes, what Krishna doesn't like, what he desires, and then we align our desires with that, then our life is more successful on the path of bhakti.
Yeah, this is an eye-opener, huh? Oh my goodness.
But, Krishna has already said this. We've already read it, but it's not easy to find. See, in chapter 3, which we did 2 days ago, text number 27, he says, the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So Krishna mentioned this in a few places in the Gita. And we just need to pick it up and understand it. And then, as Madhusudan Prabhu very, very nicely said, under the guidance of the spiritual master, realign our desires so they match Krishna's.
Yeah. Thank you so much for both of you explaining very nicely.
I hope we haven't completely blown people's minds here, but it's not us anyway. This is actually the philosophy. It's Krishna.
But that's why we are studying Bhagavad Gita. This is philosophy that transcends everything. This is direct come from Krishna. So we will get confused, obviously.
Yeah.
Any question? Any other questions? Aruna.
Very deep. I thought it's very, very eye-opening. I'm learning.
And I hope everybody joins us tomorrow. I hope you don't. It's one of the reasons I don't teach Bhagavad Gita too many times. It's deep philosophy.
Very deep. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's for everybody. It's all right.
Well, we've all desired, so we're here, discussing.
Yes.
At some point, we must have desired.
Yes.
Thank you.
Understand Krishna.
Correct.
Very true.
Here we are,
Anybody with a question? Sorry? Maitreya. Have you got
Prabhu, for the devotees, Srimati Radharani make arrangement, not the demigod.
In order to fulfill our material desires, Radharani doesn't get involved. That is only the demigods. When we have spiritual desires, Radha and Krishna come into play.
Absolutely. I think we should only desire Lord Krishna.
Absolutely. Maitreya, you're already at the Mahabhagavad level.
No. I'm just learning with you, Prabhu. You're my guru.
No. We're learning together. And our teacher, Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada.
United we stand.
United we stand. I like it. I still can't forget your kirtan yesterday. That was amazing. Okay, thank you very much, dear devotees. We're going to have to carry on with chapter 5 tomorrow. I hope devotees not finding it too slow, but as you can see, it is pretty deep and it can be very life-changing, transformational stuff. So thank you very much for your wonderful participation. Today was really extraordinary in terms of questions and also participation from the devotees. Thank you, Madhusudan Prabhu, Nani Ben, Aruna Ben.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Mataji, Madhusudan Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you all.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Lovely program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So for Bhakti Charu Swami, we can